Things you'll need for this project: an old leather belt. Real leather would be the best, as it would last longer. Just a utility knife, some cordage, whether that's paracord or this is just kind of a cheap, thing you can get at department hardware store. And then screwdriver, regular screwdriver, kind of with a thicker head is the best. A little lighter, and that's just to mend the fray of the rope. Some needle nose pliers and a pencil. If you're a big guy like me, then one belt will probably do the trick. First thing you want to do is get your knife, cut whatever little sewn things are on it, so you can get the buckle off, just like that, whatever that thing is. Alright, and then you want to cut it to length. So let me start from here. This is a little thin, so I'm going to cut it off right here actually. And then I'm going to measure my arm length, forearm length I should say. And I'm going to do it about right here. I mean, you can use a pencil, but do that. You just kind of score it a bunch of times, and you can kind of open it up and rip it usually, or get the knife and recut. Okay, and I'm going to make my second one the same length. I'm going to cut 4 of those. That's how many I want. Helps if your knife's a little sharper than mine. And this one goes into the loop section, but that's okay. Well, the extra loops that I cut. That was a little bigger back when I used this belt. I've got my 4 pieces cut. Now what I'm going to do is make some marks where I'm going to cut some little slits in them. And I'll do that with the pencil. And I'm going to kind of pair these up and make sure that they're the same, where I'm cutting the slits on each of them is the same. So I've made my marks with a pencil. I've done 7 sets, and I want them to be about 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the belt. I've tried this a couple different ways, and this is, I think, going to be the best way. And now I'm going to go and score all of these with my knife. Do that down all of them. And you want your cuts to be about 3/4 of an inch, roughly. 3/4 of an inch to an inch on all of these. So once I've scored all of them, I'm going to take the blade and I'm going to push it through like this. Be careful of your fingers. Just to make sure that these cuts go all the way through. And about the blade width is pretty sufficient. So I just kind of make sure that it's about the blade width. And then I go through and I do that on all the cuts that I've scored. Once I've made all my cuts, I'm going to take a screwdriver and kind of just widen the hole a little bit like that, so it's going to be easier to string it, and just kind of stretch it out a little bit. And do that with all of them. Back. Once I've made all my cuts, stretched it out the leather a little bit, made 4 of those. Then what I want to do is I want to get some cordage, whether it's paracord or whatever, this cheap stuff. I just got at Home Depot, 75 feet for about $5. I want to wrap it around my wrist twice, and that's just kind of measure the distance. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but about that length right there. So around my wrist twice for the length. I'm going to cut it. And then I want to burn one of these ends down. That'll allow me to string it through. Now I'm going to take my needle nose pliers, string it through, push it through there, push it through there, just like that. And then do that to the other piece of leather. So that it looks like that. Now this is a different method. I've tried a couple different methods, and this is going to be a method where it doesn't require any kind of clips or anything like that. It's going to be a lot easier to undo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tie off a little loop off of this end, and I'm just going to do a knot like this, right? So I'm taking the knot and I'm making a little loop, and I'm putting that loop through the other little loop, tightening it down. And really it doesn't matter, you can do any kind of loop. This is just to be a stop for when we do the tightening. Then what I'm going to do, and you can look up ways to do what's called an arbor knot, or Canada Joe, I think it's called, or something like Canada Jam, a jammer knot, an arbor knot. Essentially what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take an overhand knot like that. So I've just looped it in, and then I'm going to kind of get it up towards this stopper knot, and I'm going to put this end the same, following this, going the same way through, and then I'm going to tighten that knot down a little bit right there. And then what that's going to allow me to do is when I slide it onto my arm like this, then I can tighten it like this, and it stays fairly tight but not super tight. And then the way to undo it is just to simply pull that, so they're easier to get on and off. I've tried a couple different methods, and I think this is going to be the best. The next one I'm going to do more mid forearm though, and do it twice around. So I'm going to cut it about right there, just to make sure that I've got enough rope. burn just a little bit. It's kind of like wax almost, but it's not a big deal. Okay, and we'll show that knot one more time. Basically just go like this, make a loop, and then push another loop through. And again, this is just a stopper knot. So if you wanted to just do an overhand knot, that's okay too. Just like this to make a stopper, you could just go like this. And do it like that too, that's okay. But this one, this one will get tight and it'll be hard to get undone. The one that I did would be a lot easier to get undone. The other one you can do is a figure 8 where you go around twice and then through. Like a figure 8. So I like this knot though. It just allows you to easily untie it if you ever want to. Okay, so your stopper knot, however you want to do it. And then you just do a little overhand knot. And then you string this through out the same way. You kind of tighten it towards the stopper knot a little bit. The other thing you could do is you could do another stopper knot on this so it never pulls out. Okay, I've got this all strung now. I'm just going to slide my arm into all the loops. Tighten it up. So I'm going to start with the wrist one. Tighten it up like that. Next one, you can kind of adjust these as needed so the knots are kind of towards the top of your forearm. I guess this could also be used as like an archery guard. There we go. And to loosen, it's pretty easy. You just pull these the loops that we made. Slide it off, just like that. The first one I made, this is kind of the prototype. So the difference is, obviously you can see where the rope is strung, and see how I made the cuts wider towards the edges on this one instead of this one. The reason I did that is because then there's less rope showing that could fray. And this one I strung with one piece of string, thinking, okay, I could just tighten it, you know, kind of like a shoelace on your shoe, and then tighten it at the end. And I think I had one of these at the end to try to tighten it, but what happened was it just took forever to try to tighten it all up and lace it and get it tight, and it took even longer to get it off. So this is the the improved method. One thing I added that's worth mentioning is I just tied a little knot, just an overhand knot, onto the end of these so that when I loosen them, it won't pull off. It won't pull out. They held up pretty well. This is after doing the stonework. The only thing I can say is that sometimes it'll come apart and it'll fray right here where you're grabbing the stone. So the good news is that these are all solo, right? So if one breaks, you don't have to replace one. Now, those marks are from, most of that's from previous lifting. You have a little bit of a red mark, but at least you won't have any broken skin from lifting stones. One quick word of advice is if it's coming too loose, what you probably need to do is tighten this knot up into the stop. So you do that by going under here and pushing it up like that. And then that'll allow it to clamp down more on this one. And then they won't come loose.